In the desolate silence of an Alaskan winter night, the world seemed to hold its breath. The snow-covered trees stood like sentinels in the darkness, their branches heavy with frost. The only sound was the soft crunch of snow underfoot as Mike Carter trudged through the forest, his breath visible in the frigid air. He had grown accustomed to the isolation, finding solace in the quiet after years of chaos and noise. Mike's cabin, nestled deep in the woods near Fairbanks, was a haven of solitude. A former Air Force pilot, he had retreated to this remote corner of the world, seeking refuge from memories that haunted him. His days were spent chopping wood, maintaining his cabin, and occasionally venturing into town for supplies. It was a life of routine, one he had carefully constructed to keep the past at bay, but tonight, the routine was shattered. A brilliant streak of light tore across the night sky, its radiance illuminating the forest in an eerie glow. Mike's head snapped up, his military instincts kicking in. He watched, transfixed, as the light grew brighter, followed by a thunderous boom that reverberated through the trees. The ground beneath his feet trembled, and the distant echo of the explosion faded into an unsettling silence. Without hesitation, Mike grabbed his gear, flashlight, first aid kit, and his old service pistol, and set off towards the source of the explosion. His heart pounded with a mix of adrenaline and curiosity. Years of combat had taught him to be prepared for anything, but nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to encounter. As he approached the crash site, the acrid smell of burning metal filled the air. The once pristine snow was marred by blackened debris and twisted fragments of an otherworldly craft. Mike's flashlight beam danced over the wreckage, revealing a scene straight out of a science fiction nightmare, and then he saw her. Lying amidst the rubble was a figure unlike anything he had ever seen. She was small, delicate, with iridescent skin that shimmered even in the dim light. Her eyes, large and filled with pain, locked onto his as he knelt beside her. She was clearly injured, her breaths shallow and labored. Despite her alien appearance, there was something undeniably human in her gaze, a silent plea for help. Mike's instincts took over. He quickly assessed her injuries, realizing she was in critical condition. Gently, he lifted her into his arms, careful not to exacerbate her wounds. She winced but made no sound, her eyes never leaving his. There was no time to waste. Back at the cabin, Mike laid her on his makeshift medical table, his mind racing. He had no idea how to treat an alien, but he couldn't just stand by and do nothing. He cleaned her wounds with antiseptic, his hands steady despite the whirlwind of questions in his mind. Who was she? Where had she come from? And why had she crashed here, in the middle of nowhere? As he worked, he noticed a small device clutched in her hand. It appeared damaged, but he recognized some components, a communicator, perhaps. She needed to contact her people, and he needed to find a way to help her do that. But first, he had to keep her alive. Hours passed in a blur. Mike tended to her injuries as best as he could, using his limited medical knowledge and improvising with what he had. Throughout it all, the alien girl remained conscious, her eyes following his every move. They couldn't speak the same language, but there was an unspoken understanding between them. Finally, exhausted but satisfied that he had done all he could for now, Mike sat back and studied her. She was an enigma, a puzzle that had crash-landed into his carefully controlled world. But in her, he saw something familiar, a survivor, just like him. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Mike made a silent promise. He would protect her, no matter the cost. Because in saving her, he might just find a way to save himself. The cabin was silent, save for the occasional crackle of the fire and the rhythmic ticking of an old clock. The alien girl lay on the couch, her breathing shallow but steady. Mike sat nearby, his eyes heavy with fatigue but alert. He had spent the night watching over her, tending to her injuries and ensuring she remained stable. Sleep was a luxury he couldn't afford. Morning light filtered through the frost-covered windows, casting a soft glow on the room. Mike rubbed his tired eyes and took a deep breath. He needed a plan. He couldn't keep her hidden forever, and he had no idea how long it would take for her people to find her, if they even knew where to look. the girl stirred. Her eyes fluttering open. She glanced around, disoriented, until her gaze settled on Mike. There was a mixture of fear and gratitude in her expression. Mike smiled gently, trying to convey reassurance. He pointed to himself and said, "Mike." She watched him closely, then pointed to herself and said, "LRA, LRA," Mike repeated, nodding. It was a start. Communication would be a challenge, but they would find a way. He moved to the kitchen and poured a glass of water, bringing it to her. She took it with a shaky hand, her fingers brushing against his. Despite her alien appearance, the touch was surprisingly human. Mike sat down, pulling a notepad and pen from his pocket. He began sketching simple drawings, hoping to bridge the language gap. He drew a picture of the crash site, pointing to it and then to her. LRA's eyes widened in recognition, and she nodded. Next, he drew a small spaceship and pointed to her, then made a questioning gesture. LRA hesitated, then took the pen and added to his drawing. She sketched a larger ship, surrounded by smaller ones, and pointed to herself. Her hand trembled as she drew an explosion, and her eyes filled with sadness. Mike's heart ached for her. She had been part of a fleet, perhaps a mission, and something had gone terribly wrong. He took the pen back and drew a shield around her, pointing to himself. He wanted her to know that he would protect her. LRA smiled weakly, understanding his intent. She reached for the damaged communicator device and held it out to him, her eyes pleading. Mike examined it, recognizing some components but unsure how to repair it. He needed help. Grabbing his old satellite phone, Mike made a call to Jack and Sophia, his closest friends from the Air Force. They had faced countless dangers together and were the only people he trusted with this secret. Within hours, the two arrived at the cabin. Their expressions a mix of curiosity and concern. Jack, a burly man with a quick wit, took one look at LRA and let out a low whistle. "Well, Mike, you've certainly found yourself in a situation." Sophia, more reserved but fiercely intelligent, knelt beside LRA and assessed her injuries. "She's in bad shape, but it looks like you've done a good job stabilizing her. Now, let's see about that communicator." The three of them worked together, pooling their knowledge and resources. Jack rummaged through his bag of tools, while Sophia examined the device with a keen eye. LRA watched them, her hope rekindled. As they worked, Mike filled them in on what little he knew. "She needs to contact her people. If we can get this device working, maybe they can come for her." Jack nodded, his focus on the intricate wiring. "We'll do our best, Mike. But we need to be careful. If anyone else finds out about her, it could spell trouble." Hours passed in a blur of activity. The device was delicate, its technology far beyond anything they had encountered before. But they persisted, driven by the unspoken bond that had formed between them and LRA. Finally, as dusk settled over the cabin, the communicator sprang to life. A soft hum filled the room, and a holographic display flickered into view. LRA's eyes filled with tears of relief, and she looked at Mike, her gratitude palpable. Mike placed a hand on her shoulder. "We're not out of the woods yet, LRA. We need to send a distress signal, but we have to be ready for anything. Jack, Sophia, let's secure the perimeter. We don't know who, or what, might be coming." As they prepared for the unknown, a sense of purpose settled over them. They were a team once more, bound by a common goal. And in the midst of this extraordinary situation, Mike felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The humming communicator cast an ethereal glow over the cabin's interior, illuminating the focused faces of Mike, Jack, Sophia, and LRA. The signal had been sent, but uncertainty hung thick in the air. Who would respond first, LRA's allies or those who meant her harm? Mike's mind was a flurry of thoughts as he watched LRA. She had grown stronger, her resilience evident despite the weight of her circumstances. They had bonded over the past days, a connection forged in the fires of survival. But now, with the signal out, the stakes were higher than ever. Sophia broke the silence, her voice steady and calm. We need to prepare for the worst. I'll rig some tripwires around the perimeter, just in case. Jack nodded in agreement. I'll take the high ground, keep an eye out for any incoming threats. Mike glanced at LRA, her eyes filled with trust and determination. We'll keep you safe, he promised. We'll get you home. As Sophia and Jack set to work, Mike and LRA stayed inside the cabin. Mike checked the weapons stash, an old rifle, a few pistols, and some ammunition. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. LRA watched him, her gaze drifting to the communicator. She seemed restless, aware that time was not on their side. The night crept in, bringing with it a chilling wind that rattled the windows. Mike stoked the fire, the crackling flames offering some comfort against the encroaching darkness. They settled into a tense silence, every sound amplified by their heightened senses. Hours passed, and just when the tension seemed unbearable, a faint rustling outside caught Mike's attention. He signaled for LRA to stay put and moved to the door, his rifle at the ready. Jack and Sophia were already in position, their eyes scanning the perimeter. A shadowy figure emerged from the tree lean, moving with an eerie grace. It was the bounty hunter. Mike's heart pounded in his chest as he recognized the ruthless glint in the man's eyes. The hunter had tracked them down, drawn by the distress signal. The hunter spoke, his voice cold and calculating. I know you're hiding the alien. Hand her over, and no one gets hurt. Mike tightened his grip on the rifle. She's under my protection. You want her, you'll have to go through me. A sinister smile spread across the hunter's face. Very well. Without warning, the hunter lunged forward, his movements swift and deadly. Mike fired a shot, but the hunter dodged with inhuman agility. Jack and Sophia joined the fray, their combined efforts barely keeping the hunter at bay. The cabin became a battleground, the crack of gunfire and the clash of fists echoing in the night. LRA, watching from inside, felt a surge of fear and helplessness. But she knew she couldn't stay hidden forever. Gathering her courage, she activated the communicator, sending a distress signal directly to her people. They needed to know what was happening. The battle raged on, each side gaining and losing ground. The hunter was relentless, his skills honed for a single purpose, capturing LRA. But Mike and his friends fought with a fierce determination, their loyalty to each other and LRA unyielding. Suddenly, a blinding light filled the sky. A Valoran scout ship descended, its sleek design and advanced technology a stark contrast to the rustic cabin. The hunter paused, his eyes narrowing as he realized reinforcements had arrived. The ship's doors opened, and Valoran soldiers poured out, their weapons trained on the hunter. LRA stepped forward, her presence commanding. She spoke in her native tongue, her voice filled with authority. The soldiers responded, their stance protective. The hunter, realizing he was outmatched, attempted to flee. But Jack tackled him, pinning him to the ground. Sophia secured his hands, her expression one of grim satisfaction. You're not going anywhere. Mike approached LRA, his relief palpable. We did it, LRA nodded, her eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, Mike. All of you. I will never forget this. The Valoran commander stepped forward, addressing Mike and his friends. You have done a great service to our people. LRA is safe because of you. We will ensure this bounty hunter faces justice. As the soldiers led the hunter away, LRA turned to Mike, her expression both hopeful and sad. I must return to my people. But I will always remember the friends I made here. Mike felt a pang of sadness at her words, but also a deep sense of fulfillment. Take care, LRA. May your journey be safe. With a final nod, LRA boarded the ship, the door closing behind her. The scout ship ascended, disappearing into the night sky. The cabin was left in silence, but the bonds forged in those intense days would remain. Mike, Jack, and Sophia stood together, the night air cold but filled with a new sense of purpose. They had faced an extraordinary challenge and emerged stronger. And though LRA was gone, her presence lingered, a reminder of the courage and friendship that had brought them through. the Valoran scout ship's departure left a profound silence in its wake. Mike, Jack, and Sophia stood outside the cabin, watching the sky until the last trace of its light vanished. The winter night enveloped them, cold and quiet, but the tension that had gripped them for days was finally easing. Mike let out a long breath, his mind swirling with the recent events. "It's over," he said, more to himself than anyone else. Sophia nodded, her eyes still scanning the horizon. "For now. But I doubt this is the last we'll hear about LRA and her people." Jack, ever the pragmatist, holstered his weapon and patted Mike on the back. "Let's get inside and debrief. We've got a lot to process." Back in the warmth of the cabin, they settled around the fire. The flames danced, casting flickering shadows on the walls. Mike pulled out a bottle of whiskey and poured 3 glasses, handing them out in silence. They drank, each lost in their own thoughts. Sophia broke the silence first. "We did good today. But we need to stay vigilant. The hunter's not the only one out there. Others will come, and they'll be looking for answers." Mike nodded, staring into the fire. "I know. But we'll be ready. We've faced worse before." Jack raised his glass. "To LRA. May she find peace among her people." They clinked their glasses together, a solemn toast to the alien girl who had changed their lives in such a short time. The conversation drifted to lighter topics, memories of their Air Force days, and shared adventures. Laughter slowly returned, easing the weight of the past days. Hours passed, and exhaustion began to set in. Mike watched as Sophia and Jack drifted off, their heads nodding as sleep claimed them. He stayed up a while longer, his thoughts returning to LRA. Her resilience and courage had been remarkable. He wondered what her future held and if they would ever cross paths again. A soft knock on the door pulled him from his reverie. Mike tensed, reaching for his rifle. He opened the door cautiously, peering into the night. A tall figure stood there, cloaked in shadows. "Relax, old friend," a familiar voice said. "It's me." Mike lowered his weapon, a smile spreading across his face. "Marcus? What the hell are you doing here?" Marcus, an old comrade from their Air Force days, stepped inside, shaking off the cold. "Heard you might need some backup. Figured I'd drop by and see what's up." Mike laughed, clapping Marcus on the shoulder. "You're a sight for sore eyes. Come on in, we've got a lot to catch up on." As Marcus settled in, Mike filled him in on the recent events. Marcus listened intently, his expression growing more serious with each passing detail. When Mike finished, Marcus leaned back, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "Damn, Mike. You've been through the ringer. But it sounds like you handled it well." Mike shrugged. "We did what we had to. But it's not over. There's a lot more going on out there than we realized." Marcus nodded. "I've heard rumors. Whispers of unrest on other planets, and not just Valor. Something big is brewing. We need to be prepared." Mike glanced at his sleeping friends, then back at Marcus. "We will be. We've faced worse together." As the night wore on, Mike and Marcus continued to talk, their conversation shifting to plans and strategies. They knew they had to stay ahead of whatever was coming. The bond between them, forged in countless battles and shared hardships, would be their greatest strength. The first light of dawn crept through the windows, casting a soft glow over the cabin. Sophia and Jack stirred, blinking awake to see Marcus with Mike. Greetings were exchanged, and soon they were all gathered around the table, ready to face the challenges ahead. Mike looked at his friends, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. "We've got a lot of work to do. But together, we can handle anything." Sophia nodded, determination in her eyes. "Let's get started then. No time to waste." Jack grinned, his confidence unwavering. "Ready when you are, boss." And with that, they began to prepare, knowing that the future held many uncertainties but confident in their ability to face them head-on. The echoes of the past would guide them, and the bonds they had formed would keep them strong. In the quiet of the Alaskan wilderness, the cabin stood as a testament to their resilience and courage. And as the sun rose, its light symbolized a new beginning, filled with hope and the promise of new adventures.